Hi, Petra.
Hi, how are you, Peter?
I'm, I'm very well. Nice to meet you. See you.
Nice to meet you too. So you're in the UK at the moment.
In London, that's right.
Oh,
It
wonderful.
started to rain today after several days of very hot sunshine.
Okay,
So
so
now that
then, yeah,
things are a little bit cooler now, which is good for me. I prefer the cool to the sun.
yeah. Well, I
What,
think
what,
that
what's it like in Vienna?
In London, you only appreciate the rain when it's been hot.
That's right. How are things in Vienna? You're in Vienna, aren't you?
Yeah, in Vienna, we've feel the heat at the moment. Yeah, I went for a run very early this morning, but still, it was hot. I could feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a little heat wave.
That's great.
But yeah, coming from South Africa, I mean, what Europe calls a heat wave, for us is just a normal
That's true.
average summer.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're from South Africa, right?
Yeah.
I've been to Cape Town a lot. Um,
Really?
yeah. I know. Well, are you from where are you from in South Africa?
Well, I grew up in the north near Johannesburg, but I lived for a long time in Paarl in the Cape.
I've been to Paarl.
Really?
Yeah. I've had wine tours. A very good friend of mine has lived in Cape Town for 25 years, and I've been out a lot to
Oh,
visit
okay.
him. And yeah, so it's a wonderful place to go on holiday. I'm not sure about
Yeah.
living there.
No, but did you do some work there as well? I
Never
mean,
worked. Never worked.
oh,
I had a
okay.
tour. I had a tour around the opera, the theatre, and I met a
Yeah,
few people, but I've never worked there yet. But you know, who knows?
yeah. I mean, yeah, never know. Never say never.
Never say never.
Yeah.
No.
Peter, but I heard from Sarah Marie Kramer,
Yeah,
that you were involved also in the Longborough Festival, uh, the
that's
opera
right.
festival,
Right.
and yeah, she spoke so highly of you, and then I was so wanting to talk to you as well. Yeah,
That's very kind of her. Yes, we've just in fact that show has just finished. Finished on
yeah,
Monday. We did a very short rehearsal period. She's probably talked to you about it already, but
yeah.
it should have happened last year and was cancelled. And like so many things, was postponed for the whole year. So, but came back in a compromised way. I mean, it was due to be fully staged, and in the end, it was semi-staged. Although the director did as much as she could, and the orchestra, half the orchestra were on the stage, half were in the pit.
Mm.
It didn't seem as though it would work, but it did, because there was still amazing playing, amazing singing, and it turned out to be quite a important event in the end, because I think people had been so deprived of their fix
Yeah.
of opera, of arts, that they were willing to accept the compromise, and it was actually much stronger than might have been imagined. So it was really a very positive positive time for everyone. I think the singers really enjoyed doing it, and the orchestra enjoyed playing. I know I'm jumping the gun in what we're talking about, but the general feeling is that people are glad to be working, and there's not much work out there, and it's great to be doing something, even if it's not what it might have been last year. And it's a way forward and a step forward, which we have to take.
Yeah, she also mentioned that, that they were all just so happy to be there and just adapted to all the regulations and all the things. And this I find very fascinating is how you as artists just, get your heads around it and just do it and find a way, in a creative way, and then it works. And she told me that the orchestra was on stage and that they sang and they walked um, amongst you. And how was that for you as a conductor?
Well, first of all, I should say I wasn't the conductor. I was the assistant conductor on this project. So I was I wasn't having to deal with it in the very coal face, but I was having to deal with it, how it sounded out in the auditorium and in the preparation. I think faced with changes, one I don't think this is I don't think artists have a monopoly on this. I think we all deal with change when we need to, and adapt to a new circumstance. I'm not sure that I'm sure a decorator would deal with a change in circumstance in the same way that as a musician. I mean, for a start, the concept of a concert opera, a sort of opera in concert, is well established. So we people are used to being on the stage with an orchestra, and there have been lots of semi-stage operas where the singers are on the same level as the as the orchestra, and maybe they walk around them. Maybe not as integrated as they were in this particular production, but it's not that far removed from things that we've done before. The difference here would have been probably that it was a half and half experience. That the strings were on the stage, and the wind and brass were in the pit, as they would normally be, and that had the happy result of making the balance great. I mean, whether it was by design or by fault, by accident, the actual overall balance, which is, as the assistant, was a thing that I'm particularly interested in, came across very well, and that the sound blended very well, and the voices came over the brass in the pit very, very well, and it made a very good overall effect. So I think that was actually a very happy outcome for this particular concert, or opera, as you call it, not a concert.
Yeah. But this is what I was going to ask you this, because I spoke to another conductor who did a recording, and he said he could hear, and the timing was not so 100% because the orchestra members were so far apart. And did you find that as well with the fact that the orchestra was split?
I know that Anthony Negus, who was the conductor, struggled initially, and couldn't quite believe that it sounded as good as it did sound. So I did go and I conducted some sections of the rehearsal for him to go and listen to how it sounded, and he was surprised, because actually, when you're in the pit, when you're conducting and standing in the middle of things, you can't really tell the balance. But that's true of of a normal opera situation. You standing there in the pit, you don't really hear the balance as we in the audience perceive it. So and you're always often relying on your assistant or other pairs of ears to tell you, actually, this is a good balance between strings and wind, or the clarinet doesn't come out here. Whereas in the pit, you might hear the clarinet well, but in the audience doesn't come through. These are things that one is always having to pay attention to in opera rehearsal. And I guess when you do it a lot, you get used to that, and so you automatically know that the volume that you're hearing in the conductor's space, you can adjust. You can imagine how that sounds in the auditorium, and you just get used to that, I suppose. And I suppose this new arrangement was something, again, to get used to. But again, these are things that you talk about. If we are able to adapt, you learn quickly in this situation, and it doesn't take long, and it doesn't take long for the players to get used to it either. And by the end, they were playing. I agree. The strings can't hear the wind, and normally they can, and they get used to it. And is it a miracle? I don't know what it is. Just just use your ears. Musicians are used to using their ears and listening and adjusting and adapting balance, and that's we all started playing chamber music, and you're always listening.
But I think these things that happen, like this opera and how it was staged, and I don't know, maybe the sounds also when there are recordings where the orchestras, the musicians are further apart. If this would be really something that we would later on treasure of this time, that it was, something that would be only of this time and not, that wouldn't be done again, and that it has been done in the spirit of the musicians and the artists of wanting to come back and wanting to do it again.
That's right. I think rather do it this way than not do it at all, for sure. Yeah. For sure. And yes, sure, lessons are learned and experiences are gained, and you're right, we will treasure. I mean, I think string players are used to playing in a body, a big body of players, maybe 10 first desks, 8 second desks, and in this particular one there were just 4 firsts and 4 seconds, and they were all playing sitting at individual stands, not sitting at a desk with 2 people. And string players get very used to the partnership with their desk partner, and one turns a page for them, for example, and you play in unison, and by being in a body, it really helps you play together. And here they were very much playing in their own space, with limited contact with each other, and limited contact with sections. One of the problems I remember in the early rehearsals, the violas couldn't see the first violins, and normally you want to have a lovely little semicircle where all the main principal string players have a good contact with each other, like a string quartet, and play organically, and you don't need you can coordinate with the first violin very easily. And in this situation, because of the way people had to sit, there was a very limited arrangement. The cellos couldn't see the violas, who couldn't see the first violins, and that was very difficult. And again, just getting used to it. And there were lots of things that weren't together initially, which got together later. They would have been together immediately in a normal situation. I guess, yeah, one's learned that way, but one wouldn't choose to do it that way.
Yeah, yeah. But maybe there will be something that that would be taken with in time, or that musicians that you've learned, or that you've seen. Okay, but this works actually very well. So yeah.
Well, we'll let you know in a couple of years. I think actually one fear is that managements will see how well it goes with reduced players. Because the strings were on stage, we didn't need as many as we would have needed had they been in the pit. So normally in the pit, for the balance between wind and brass, you need double the strings. So we only had 19 strings. You would normally want at least 40, double that, to balance out. And I think managements might well be thinking, well, and we got away with 20 fees, and people were happy with it, so why don't we try and save money next time, and not do the full, have the full body of players that we need. I mean, it's a slippery slope when you start economizing that way, and you get away with it artistically. You can imagine, well, I'm going to save 10, 20, 30,000, whatever, next time by doing it this way, and you can imagine people being tempted to do that.
Yeah. Well, that would be a pity. But I also heard conductors saying that they predict that there will be this trend of, smaller orchestras, smaller venues, to make it more, to make it more accessible because of all the restrictions now. Do you think also?
Yeah, but the restrictions are going to end, aren't they? At some point, the restrictions are going to end, and we're going to be allowed to sit next to each other in a theatre as an audience and as players. It's not going to be like this forever. But yes, the question is, will it return? Even though it can return, will it return? Because the people will have got used to smaller players and less money being spent. I think. I would imagine that we would look forward to the return of big symphonic work, which we've been deprived of the last, to have a big 100 people on stage playing Alpen Symphony would be wonderful. I think we've missed that, and I imagine the orchestras. Well, again, it's different on the continent to in the UK, but the big symphony orchestras, the big who are full-time, pay, salary, whatever. There's no reason why they can't get back together again and play these big works when we're released from lockdown, whenever that is. And it's gonna surely, we're not gonna be like this forever, are we? I hope not.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, but how did you cope in the past year in lockdown?
Well, yeah, I mean, there were difficult times, and all of a sudden I lost half a year of work. One engagement went, another one I went, and so in the space of a couple of weeks in March, suddenly the diary was empty. But like all of my colleagues and many of my friends, we just that's it's amazing what you accept after a while, and everyone, it's amazing. You would not have imagined that we would be walking in a park, not allowed to sit on the park bench. Because it was taped off. I don't know what it was like in Austria, but in some of our parks, you were forbidden from sitting down because you had to be moving, you had to be circulating. You couldn't sit down and socialize. I mean, if you'd said that a month ago, you would that would have been crazy. It'd been like the Handmaid's Tale, some dystopian universe. And then suddenly we were all doing that a month later. And so you know, one quickly got used to the situation. I mean, obviously financially it was a worry, but I was lucky. My partner, my wife, is a full-time teacher, so there was one full-time salary coming in. I was lucky in that I got some money from the government. Not a lot of artists slip through the net for various reasons in the UK. I know. I'd be interested to hear what it's like in Austria, actually, because I'd heard that in Austria, artists got a grant of some kind immediately without having to even ask for it. Is that true? Is that right?
You had to prove that you, I mean, there were, I don't know exactly what, but I know there were a few who had a bit of problem when they were not in the country long enough, or when they didn't. Sometimes it's this transition where they just started going freelance and they didn't have proof of income and that type of thing. But overall, I think Austria and Germany were countries where the artists were really well looked after. I've spoken to many artists also in America, and of course now in South Africa. It's you know, there it's really heartbreaking, you know, what they have to deal with. But
I'd say sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, but it's also just how they this is what fascinates me so much, is how they just you know, start doing things or solving the problem in a way, you know, and it's fascinating how they do it.
I spent 2 months just maybe retreating into myself a little bit, and listening to a lot of music that I wanted to listen to learn. I spent a lot of time listening to Mahler, listening to Strauss, listening to Bruckner. I maybe was actually fantasizing about big orchestras again, you know, not imagining at that stage a year ago that everything was going to be reduced in chamber, because we had no idea how things were going to turn out. But yeah, I just spent a long time just listening to music. I was very lucky to have that space, and that you know, there was no financial imperative. So maybe I had a sort of lucky time, and my family were here. My two adult children were living with me, and they were all very busy. The house was quite full. There was a lot going on. Had I been, you know, on my own, isolated with you know, limited income, it would have been a very frightening time. I think, you know, and a very isolating time. But actually, I think it wasn't too bad. I think the worst time was when we got locked down again in January. Having had September through to December, there were, you know, things started to come back. Some of my teaching work started again. So one felt like one was going back to normal. You were starting to plan a little bit, hoping to plan for future projects. And then you know, it was all taken away again in January and February, and then obviously the weather was different, so that felt a bit bleaker and a bit more depressing, actually. And you know, I wasn't listening to Mahler and Bruckner at that time. I was sort of just thinking, all right, I really want to get out and you know, do some work and have a normal life again. I think it was more existential rather than artistic. It was sort of wanting to no longer be restricted in what one could do and where one could go. So yeah, but look, I think looking back, and I know the time's not over yet, but right now I'm in the middle of three projects back to back, and it feels sort of, you know, although they're all different and they're all as a result of the pandemic, different, but it feels like I'm working again and doing opera again, and that sort of, you know, makes me feel happy.
Yeah. Well, I've with my project that I've done since April. Well, the project started in April 2020, and I I photographed over 500 artists in their windows. So, and I've spoken to most of them, and I could really sense every time how the mood of everybody is changing. And you know, it was also in the summer. It started opening up a little bit, and then, but it's always this thing where it was almost as if everybody just could breathe, and then comes another lockdown, and then it's again all these cancelled works, you know. And but I did sense over January, February, March, it was really you could sense that everybody just, I think, just was tired. You know, they
Yeah.
just mentally tired of this hope and just wondering and not knowing and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's difficult. And again, by this stage, those people who, you know, but obviously the money had run out for a lot of people by this stage.
Yeah.
But in towards summer, you could probably get by with whatever you had. But you know, towards the end of a whole year of very little income, that's, you know, a lot of people were really suffering, and there are terrible stories of people leaving the profession and going on to other things because they just simply have to, you know.
Well, I heard in America, it was around January that I spoken to musicians and in America as well, and I was hearing stories of artists having to sell their instruments just to have money, you know, and that is very heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. That's obviously very extreme. You know, if you're selling your main income source, that's terrible. But I guess actually in countries like America, UK, you know, it's harder because there's no real structure of artistic work. It's all a bit cheek by jowl, hand to mouth, one project to another. And we are a nation, and I think America's similar, a nation of freelancers. And you know, we look at Austria and Germany with envy, the way everyone, it seems. I lived in Germany for 8 years, and everyone in Germany, and I was a full-time employee of the opera house I worked at in Nuremberg, and I had a salary, and I was like a civil servant, you know, with the pension and all that sort of stuff, and that was the norm. And for living in the UK as an artist, as a musician, that's just very rare. There are very few full-time playing jobs in the UK, very few. Similar for singers, very, very few full-time singing jobs. There's no such thing as an operatic ensemble in the UK. They used to be at Covent Garden, and you know, they used to have a roster of the artists they use again and again, mainly for the small parts. There's no such thing. You know, and there are 85 opera houses in Germany, and how many in Austria? Must be about a dozen at least, full-time, with a full ensemble of singers and chorus and orchestra. And I know I know that Germany and Austria feel the pinch and feel that things are getting more difficult, and support is dwindling and finances are being taken away, but from a much higher level than we have in the UK. So maybe that means actually that the UK, you know, that musicians, I can only really speak for musicians, are more resilient in the UK, because we're used to having to find work ourselves and having to, you know, look after our own diaries and fight a little bit for jobs, rather than having the comfort of the salary in the orchestra, in the chorus, whatever. And I think and that may have had the result of making more things happen. You know, setting up new things is more, you know, there are lots of things being set up in the UK by young people, old people, whatever, new artistic groups creating work, because we always have been creating work for ourselves, always finding new ventures, new companies to work with. Whereas in my impression of Germany, Austria, is, you know, that's quite rare to start something new, because most people don't need to. They have a job.
Yeah, well, here are, I mean, if I think how many artists I photographed, and there are thousands more, and they all have something. They're all not involved in the theaters, but they all have their own ensembles or their own duos or quartets or so on. And but they also move around in Europe a lot, you know, so they go all over. But interestingly, I asked all the artists that I've spoken to, do you feel valued, or do you feel artists are valued, or do you feel art is valued where you are? And it's different from the different countries. I heard the different answers. But interestingly enough, one artist said to me, I've lived in the UK and I've lived in Germany. If you ask me this in the UK, I would say, no, it's not valued. But if you ask me this in Germany, I say, I feel it is more valued. Artists are more valued. And this was very interesting and I thought, really, I thought, because the UK have these wonderful opera houses, and I mean, I know there are great schools where you know, the Royal College of Music, and even in ballet, the Royal Ballet School, and so on. So you would assume that that would be a country where art is really valued, you know, or artists are really valued. But the freelancers say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where to start with that, because what you say is absolutely true, and it's particularly now with Brexit and particular type of government we have, this very authoritarian right-wing government. One feels that, I mean, art is the least valued of anything. It's all about money, and art brings no money. I mean, even in education, you know, arty subjects are being suppressed. You know, the music is not always taught in schools, classroom music, and there's a government policy to suppress arty subjects in schools and promote maths and science, saying, you know, art subjects aren't rigorous enough. You know, the education you get by doing an art subject is inferior to the education you get doing a science subject, which, and you know, from an early age, you know, art is being, you know, pushed out. That's just one thing. In terms of the way, you know, the way the government responded to supporting artists. Well, they support the buildings, they support the staff of the buildings, you know, and you know, obviously without buildings you can't, well, you can perform outside, and people are performing outside, but buildings do need infrastructure. But in this country, in the UK, the buildings are empty because the artists who come in to staff and perform in these buildings are all freelance. And they're given no support, whereas the buildings are supported, and the staff run the buildings and are getting their furlough money and getting their government support. And the government gave 1.4 billion to the arts. It sounds a lot of money. It is a lot of money. You could do an awful lot with it, but that money didn't trickle down to the artists. And you know, I'm doing a project in August where I struggled for a long time to get the company who are doing it to agree to do it, because I mean they had a bunch of money from the government, but were holding on to it, not wanting to spend it on a production which would feed 10 singers and 20 players. But they are doing it now, to their credit. But with, you know, it was quite hard work to force them to do it, or persuade them to take the risk, because they'd rather sit with the money than risk losing it, because it is hard to set something up right now. We don't know. So I'm talking about I'm doing a reduced version of the Valkyrie with a small opera festival called Grimebourne, and they are and because it's done on a small scale, they aren't sure that the money they'll get back from the audience. Obviously, audiences are still reduced, are still restricted, still have to be socially distanced. You can't get the income that you might have got. So we're going to a big venue, paying a lot of money for a big theatre in order to have a maybe 500 audience, which in a 1,500 seat theatre, whereas you would have normally had a smaller theatre. So you're paying a lot out, and I can see there's a risk, because you don't know. The government might say a day before it starts, I'm afraid we have to cancel everything and go back into lockdown, and that can happen. But until you start risking ventures, nothing's going to get off the ground.
Well, you've also touched a very important subject that I also feel very passionate about, and that is the education of art. And I think it's for me so backwards. If you think there's I don't know if you know, there's a writer, Seth Godin, and he writes about the fact that the school system is based on the how do you say that, you know, during the industrial era, they designed the schools so that these children are basically trained also to work in factories, you know, and the subjects were maths and science, because that was what the countries needed. But now we've moved away from that in a way, also because there has been research done to prove that art, music and music education and art education has an effect on the brain. It has, you know, and also look at musicians and look at dancers. Look at dancers, for example, who go on to a second career after their dancing career. They always make a success of that because of the fact that they have these life skills that you learn by, you know, doing art. And even, you know, if children could play an instrument in school, just the fact that they have to learn that dedication, that discipline of practicing and things like that, those are all wonderful life skills that could make them successful also in other parts of their life. And this is, for me, so backward thinking if you think that governments don't understand this, even though the research has been done, you know?
No, absolutely right. Yes, it's the government is there's not really an artistic brain cell in our government. I mean, in the old days, you might have had a Tory minister who loved classical music. You know, our old Chancellor of the Exchequer was often seen at Glyndebourne and Bayreuth, and they weren't embarrassed about it. But now, actually, there is one cabinet minister, Michael Gove, who does go to the opera, but they literally go and hide, because for them to be seen at a cultural event like the opera is bad publicity. It's sort of, you know, the average person sees someone in a dinner jacket, not that you have to wear a dinner jacket to go to Bayreuth or Glyndebourne, but you see them going to the opera and they are, you know, it's very bad news for them. So they literally creep in and creep out. That wouldn't happen in Germany, you know. And Angela Merkel goes to Bayreuth and it's front page news, and it's big, it's good news for her. It's a good story. Whereas, you know, it just doesn't work like that in this country. I don't know, it's this odd feeling of artists are elite, and it's only for special people, and that's just so, you know, any artist would say that it's not, you know, it's not about that. And, you know, we want to bring kids into the opera houses, and anyone into the opera houses, because, you know, we think our particular art form is a fantastic art form. We love it, and we think it, you know, anyone would love to come and sit through one of our shows. You know, obviously one has to, you can't just bring a group of school kids into Covent Garden and sit through La Traviata without, you know, some background information, and, you know, maybe there might be, you know, one can't just, you know, do that. But it's heartbreaking how divorced the, you know, the arts are from society in the bigger picture. You know, it's sort of, it's hard work. It's hard work in this country. That's not to say there are great things going on in this country, but it's hard work. And I, having spent my time in Germany and Austria, I really appreciated the fact that art was more integrated. It seemed more integrated, and you know, when I was in Nuremberg, I felt that the average person, when I said that I worked in the theatre, they thought, oh, that's great. Oh, I'd love to come and see you do something. Or, you know, the people, the average person I came across thought it was tremendous. And they also felt, yeah, I can come to the theatre because it belongs to me. It's part of the civic package, really. You know, the theatre belongs to everyone in the town, and every town has got its own theatre, and, you know, they feel pride in it.
Very pride, yeah. No, definitely that you do find here. And, you know, the Vienna State Opera is a very prominent sort of establishment or in this city. And then in many cities, you know, in Germany and Austria. And like you say, our Bundespräsident also, you know, he supports the art and talks about the art and visits the art, you know, the theater, and that gets posted as well, you know, on his social media pages. And very proud that he attends these things. So yeah, I think this is also in England. I have this idea that the art education is very exclusive. You know, it's almost these drama schools and ballet schools it costs a lot of money to have your child in there, and it's not available for everybody. You know, if you cannot afford it and you don't have a sponsor, then I know one of my children wanted to study drama, and we just didn't have the funding for her to do it, and I couldn't get a sponsor to pay the fees, you know, at these
in the UK.
In the UK, yeah. Two of my children was at the Royal Ballet School, but they had sponsors, but we couldn't get a sponsor for my other daughter, and it is just a matter of, you know, she got a place but not a scholarship, so you have to then look for funding, and this is what I found very difficult, because they, you know, that makes it very exclusive. Children. And if you think in Europe, you know, for a child to study drama or music, and even here at the music university, the fees are not that high. You know, they can afford to pay it.
Well, I mean, talking about tertiary education, i.e., you know, college, conservatory education, that's true all over UK in all universities, not just music and ballet and drama. But, you know, if you want to study English, you're paying your £9,000 a year in fees. And I think if you go to music college, I'm not quite sure what the fees are, but they're probably similar in that area. So there's no distinction between funding your degree in history or in the clarinet. You know, you're still paying a lot of money, and spending, you know, 3 years and then having to pay maintenance on top. There are scholarships available, but you're talking, you know, what you were talking about, the sort of secondary level,
the ballet school,
specialist education.
The ballet school, that was, I think it was £30,000 a year, and then you know, not many families can.
No, well,
there was a state, a little, you know, sort of your means tested and so on, but still, it's a lot of, you know, that we needed a sponsor to help, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to afford that. But that is why I'm saying this is as if art, you know, I know of families whose children could have gone, but didn't, because they couldn't afford it. So and that is, I think it's, if art could be taught in schools as a main subject, and children could then decide, you know, if they want to pursue a career in art, or just have that experience of having that experience, you know, that so we don't all became mathematicians, and we all had maths in school, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, so it can be the same with art, and it can be same with music, that children learn about it to appreciate it, and some will be the musicians and some will be the audience, you know.
Well, like I said earlier, we're getting rid of art subjects, or we're you know, one lesson a week maximum, and sometimes no music teacher in the school. I don't imagine it's like that in Austria. I think, you know, people will always have artistic endeavor. There will always be creative people, and maybe you don't actually have to have lessons in things at school to develop those skills, but you need support. You need to see it. You need to see it in action. I guess if you're from a home that has books on the shelves and is interested in theatre, then you're going to know about it much more. But your average kid from you know, maybe a poorer background with no exposure to it, if there's nothing in school, then they'll come out of school and they won't have seen anything. And you're right, they're not going to be the artists of the future, are they? There needs to be, it needs to be taken seriously in this country, in education, and obviously, and there are a lot of people in this country who are working really hard to change that, and are, you know, are very aware of the problem.
Well, I think the more, I think the more we talk about that, you know, the more I don't know. I live a bit in the clouds, so I always believe something can happen, but we just have to talk about it and raise awareness, you know, that and think about it, and so that somebody can find a solution. Or even if one or two people start doing something, then of course it can create a wave to do
You
more and
need
more and
you
more.
need role models, and we've got
Yeah.
some great role models in UK. There's a
Mm.
I mean, let's talk about you know well, I don't want to say skin color, but let's talk about uh, ethnic differences. We've got this wonderful family musicians in the UK called the Kenny Masons. And there's a wonderful cellist called Sheku Kenny Mason, and he won the Young Musician of the Year. Their family, they're a BAME BAME family, and all of the children are very, very talented musicians, and they are all over the press. They're lauded, and they're really held up to be role models, and that's fantastic because
Yeah.
other children from that ethnic background can see themselves represented by this family and see, well,
Exactly.
if they can do it, he can play the cello. I didn't know that someone of that ethnic origin could play the cello. And it's you know, suddenly eyes are opened and things become possible when you see role models when you see yourself mirrored at a higher level. And that's great. But totally ironically, well, it's not ironically, it's tragic. I don't know if you've seen the press today. This particular guy, who's one of the most famous young musicians in the country, and he played at Prince Harry's wedding. So he's very, you know, on TV, he's very recognizable. His passport application was turned down. His passport was up for renewal, literally this week, yesterday, 2 days ago, and it's been rejected by the Home Office. Which
For
is
what reason?
well, I don't know. I don't know what the reason is, but there's some sort of, it's utterly. You know, he was born in Nottingham, brought up in, you know, the whole family have been in this country for years and years. We have this whole thing about, you know, people aren't sure if they belong, if they're allowed to stay, and obviously, I mean, maybe it shouldn't be any different to anyone receiving that news that their passport's not being renewed, or there's a problem with your status in your country. But for this, you know, amazing role model for it to happen to him, it's totally indicative of how awful things are right now, with Brexit and the pandemic and life in general, politics in general in this country.
Yeah, but this is what somebody also mentioned, is that already for a musician to travel, say from UK to Europe, you know, you have your expenses and so on, but now with the Brexit, you have to go and get the visa as well, and it's more and more expensive on top of it.
I don't think we yet know the full, if I can say the word, shitstorm about that. We don't, because COVID, the pandemic, has hidden or stopped a lot of travel anyway. We don't really know the full extent of how bad things are going to be for British people to go and work abroad, because there are two things holding us back. But when there's only one thing holding us back, like, which will just be Brexit, then we will see how, you know, in what a terrible position we are. And it is incredibly hard to go abroad and work. You know, there's lots of paperwork, very expensive. You know, it was always lovely to pop over for a concert to Germany, just a one-off. Obviously, you can't do that now because you've got to quarantine for 10 days. So, but take that aside. When we no longer have to quarantine, will it be worth filling out the paperwork and paying for your visa? And at the moment, the UK government saying there are no exceptions, and that there are no exceptions coming into the country, coming out of the country. They're this very hard line. We are an island. We are British. People who stay in Britain, work in Britain. We're discouraging you from going abroad, discouraging foreigners from coming in to work. You know, this lack of cultural exchange, and not just in art, but in, you know, other things. They don't want to make art an exception. People are looking for an artist visa. It's not going to happen because there's a sort of dogmatic approach to you know, it's Brexit means Brexit, and there's no sympathy. There's nothing to be gained by government supporting artists who want to go and perform in Madrid or Vienna. There's nothing to be gained at all in the press, in the media. So there's no bonus for them to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the next couple of years are going to be pretty bleak in that way for us. I hope to be proven wrong, and I'm sure if you're determined and you had a great contract in Vienna or somewhere in Berlin, then you would find a way of going to do it. But there's a small scale stuff that's going to be really difficult. But, the well-paid concert tour they'll probably happen. But for the single artist going out to do a concert or to do a small tour, self-promotion, it's very difficult. And that's a real shame. It's a real shame. It's a tragedy.
But you also, I read that you go all over the world.
Well, I mean, I have been all over the world. I'm not going all over the world at the moment. I haven't. I haven't. Most of my work, as it happens, in the last year or two, has been pretty much UK focused. Okay. So personally, I'm not that affected. I used to run a festival in Nuremberg in Germany, and I used to organize travel for maybe 10, 15 musicians from all over the world to come to Nuremberg. That would be very difficult now. And the festival, which I founded but co-founded but have now left, is also running down now because it's very difficult to keep it going. My own personal situation is pretty much work is pretty much UK based now, and so in a way Brexit personally doesn't affect me as much as it might have done had I been maybe 20 years younger and trying to get abroad a bit more. I've had my time abroad. I'm now a bit more based here. So personally, it's not too bad, but it does restrict things. I mean, I would like to have the opportunity to go to work in Germany if I got an offer, but so I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. But it's not good. It's not good news at the moment at all.
But listen, Peter, do you have a pre-concert, just on a lighter note now, do you have a pre-concert ritual or something that you do normally before a concert?
Before a concert, I spend at least an hour in the bedroom looking at the music, looking at my score. I go through the score of whatever I'm about to conduct, from first page to last page. Just going through it, reminding myself a few things, and an hour of focus with the music at some point during the day. Because I think when I haven't done that, I've suddenly found myself, I don't know what's coming next, or I can't remember what's coming, or you just need to remind yourself what you're about to do. So a bit of time to myself with the music. I suppose that's a ritual. I mean, I don't knock on the door 3 times and turn a circle, if that's what you mean.
Oh, okay.
and say the Scottish name or whatever. I don't have any sort of superstitious ritual, but that's a sort of a focus ritual that
But you don't go into this zone that nobody can talk to you.
Oh no.
You just okay, yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's important to have an hour to yourself at some point, ideally in the afternoon, not too far away from the concert. It's important, there might be a rehearsal during the day. You don't want to. You want to make sure that you've had some time to just relax.
Yeah.
And actually, food-wise, tend to like to eat early. I can't eat a big meal before a concert. I don't think many people can actually. So timing the food is important. So maybe about 3 o'clock, a bowl of pasta or something. But I have to say, Petra, it's been such a long time since I've done a performance. So I'm trying to think about what I do. So this is my old response.
Your old habit.
maybe So I look forward to my performances of the Valkyrie in the Hackney Empire in August, to remind myself of what it's like to be a conductor and what it's like to perform in the evening, because it's been a while.
Yeah. And then do you also drink wine when you're finished?
Beer.
Oh, beer. Okay. So
Gotta be a beer.
what is your favorite beer then?
Oh, well, I mean, I love German beer, of course.
Oh, okay.
A nice cold lager.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that is your cool
Yeah,
down after
that's
the
my cool down. Absolutely.
yeah. Oh, this is wonderful. But and do you say you don't come to Europe now that often, but you have been in Vienna, haven't you?
Yes. Well, actually, funny enough, 15 years ago, I was offered a job at the Volksoper. I was offered a job
Oh, okay.
and as a head of music, and I didn't take it. My family at the time, you know, it was either go to Vienna or go back to London, and
Oh, I
um,
see. Mm.
and my family, well, you know, it was we'd been in Germany for a good amount of time, and the next move was coming up, and the job I got was in Vienna, but we came back to London. I didn't do it, and I do think about how my life might have been different had
Yeah.
I got taken a job in Vienna, but you never know. I mean, I love Vienna, and it would have been great to have spent some time there and get to know it better. You know, I've probably been a handful of times. I don't know it very well, so I didn't take that opportunity. So you know, life is full of what ifs, isn't it? You know.
You know, everything happens at the right time, and I
Yeah,
just
and that
believe
was the
in
wrong
that.
time.
You know? Yeah. But maybe I will see you one day in Vienna. So yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with Sarah about possibility of doing some, you know, doing concerts with her, maybe in Vienna and in the UK. So you'll hear about them if they happen in Vienna for sure.
I hope when you come, then you write to me so that I can meet you in person at least. You and I and Sarah can go for a coffee.
At
She's so
least.
lovely. Yeah, she's lovely, lovely woman. Yeah. But Peter, thank you so much for your time.
Petra, thank you for giving me the
And
chance to have a
is this all right if I post it on YouTube, our conversation?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. And have a lovely afternoon in the UK. And I hope the sun will shine soon.
Thanks, Petra. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.